Haymaker Coffee Company was established in 2021 to create the best coffee to fuel the underdogs who perseveres, who hustles, and have the give-it-all mentality to achieve their American dream. Haymaker Coffee only roasts top quality, specialty grade coffee beans, resulting in brews that satisfies those who demand every drop from their coffee and day. If you work hard, run hard, fight hard, and play hard, we have your coffee right here.
And we're back, Stripe Show podcast. I'm your host, Travis Fulton. Thank you for making us part of your day. Hope you are having a great week. Golf is back. Pro golf, that is. I know some of you in the north right now, you're like, wait a minute, I'm looking out my window and there's 2.5 feet of snow and the wind's blowing and the wind chill is 12 degrees. I get it. But pro golf is back and they're in Hawaii, and there's nothing more than I like than to, put the kids down, pour a glass of wine, turn it on, and the coverage is just coming on from Hawaii. The scenes, little light wind, trade wind. You can see the palm trees moving. And I don't know. It's just, it's a nice feeling. And I'll be watching some pro golf this week, Century Tournament of Champions, and next week at the Sony. And a guy that's playing this week on the podcast on Wednesday, Sepp Straka, great year. He is in the field of 39 at Kapalua, and his coach joins me here today, who's not in Kapalua. They don't invite you to these. John Tillery, how you doing, buddy?
Good, man. How are you?
What's up, man? They're like, all this hard work that you guys put in, you travel the country with them, the world in some cases, and they can't get you to Kapalua, you and the family, for like 2 or 3 days. Come on, Sepp.
Yeah, no, I'm sure he'd be happy to have me. I try not to mix vacation and work too much. So that's a long flight to have to go to work.
That is a long flight. So Tom Hoagie's going to be on the podcast Monday, and we were exchanging texts with him. And here's Hoagie's schedule. So he's playing this week, right? Of course, he won. He's playing at Kapalua. He's going to leave after Sunday, fly to California. He's going to the Georgia TCU game. And then he's flying back to Sony.
I love it. Probably a few casino stops in there somewhere too.
Oh, yes, sir. Of course, Sepp went to Georgia and Tom Hoagie went to TCU. So, and I know you're a Bulldog. Look, these Horned Frogs have a chance. They're down 13-point underdog. This would be amazing if TCU somehow could pull this off. And it feels like a back-to-back national championship for the Dogs to me.
It would be amazing. I hope it doesn't happen, but it would be amazing. But we saw last weekend that, you can't count them before they hatch. And I expect them to give us a good game, but I'm hoping it was a little bit of a wake-up call last weekend.
What's your schedule look like this year? I know you work with a lot of players. I know it kind of comes and goes. Some are in, you got 4 or 5, then all of a sudden you got 3. That's just the nature of the beast with you guys out there, and you guys travel a lot. What's your schedule look like this year and say the next couple of years? I know your boys are getting older. You gonna be traveling as much? Or you gonna be spending a little more time at the house there?
Yeah, I'm kind of pulling back a little bit. I've gone to it happens fast, right? Like I've looked up and I've gone to 25 events for whatever 10, 11 years in a row. Like you said, boys growing up, I need to be home a little more. I'll still go to plenty of events to be with my guys, and just trying to work with them a little more at home, which, to be totally honest with you, is more productive anyway.
Yeah, sometimes, right? It's tough out there. I have this conversation with a lot of coaches who I exchange DMs with, and I never really elected to go out there and do what you guys are doing. I have a lot of respect for what you guys do out there and how much time, and that's why I tell people, I'm like, you have no idea how much time these guys spend at the range, on the golf course, the putting green. And then it doesn't end there. It's dinners, it's late night texts, phone calls with the player, their significant other. You're talking to their dog. It's like, it really never ends, does it, John?
No, it's a circus, and like I said, the the hard thing is the time that you really have away from distractions to be able to get any work done, right? Like Mondays turn into usually travel day. Tuesdays are good. But even then, you might get a little session in and they go and play 9, let's say, in a practice round and have a little money match. And so you're kind of watching and, yeah, you're getting videos kind of talking between shots, which is better than nothing. But then, Wednesdays, they're generally entertaining guys for 5, the whole day's kind of eating up a lot of days with pro-ams, and then gun goes off. So, I always used to joke that, having a full day at home with one of my guys is about the equivalent of going to 4 events.
Yeah, that's just it. Like, how do you get? I mean, it's so hard to get stuff done out there. I'll be at the American Express here in a couple weeks, and I'll stand there and watch and talk to you guys, a few players I know, and capture a few swings and this and that, and I'll just kind of observe and watch. And I'm watching coaches trying to get stuff done with their players, and it's just hard. I mean, there's just so many moving parts and people and distractions and this and that, and man, it's just hard to get stuff done. So I'm sure when you can get them in your studio, when that 2-week off season happens, right? You get like 2 or 3 weeks off, and you can actually get a few things done. I just had Chris Como on, and we were talking about some of the things that they've been doing in the off season. Him down in West Palm there, working with Jason Day and Bryson and some others, and I think he kind of feels the same way. All right, I want to talk about there's a lot of things I want to talk about here, but I think when you look at my audience, like I have a lot of amateur players, some pros that listen to this, but I have a lot of teachers too. I get a lot of feedback from teachers, which is awesome, that watch this podcast. And they always enjoy listening, obviously, to my guests, and particularly, I think, the teachers that are out there and doing this for a living, working with the best players, because that's the aspirations that a lot of them have. Some don't, but some do. And I want you to share your insight on working, your experience with Rickie Fowler, who you worked with for, 2.5 years, 3 years, somewhere in there?
Yeah, something like that, 2.5 maybe. Yeah.
So Rickie comes to you. There were some physical things with his back that you guys had to work around. I remember when you guys started, I had you on the podcast, and we were talking about some of the changes with the body and the club and this and that. Take us into that experience, JT, as you kind of had some time now and you look back and, maybe some of the things that you learned through that experience with Rickie.
Yeah, no, it's, he's still one of my favorite people in the world, and we stay in touch. And really and truly, like, I expect him to have a good year this year. He's working on essentially a lot of the same things that we were doing. But yeah, it's obviously different with different players. You take somebody like Rick, who really and truly, like, game's always been easy for him, right? Good since all the stories are good since they were little. Never really thought much about their golf swing. Kind of always came easy to them. And then, to me, those kind of can be challenging if their pattern kind of gets a long ways away from what it was. It's one of those things, like, it works till it doesn't, and then it's kind of like, now what? And the X's and the O's, like I said, is that, like, that's the easy part.
Yeah.
For me and for him, seeing, hey, this is what we need to do, this is what we need to change, blah blah blah. The hard part is, blending that, especially the way the season is blending that into when they're playing all the time. Because you'd always kind of see everything obviously reverting back. You want to be able to play not thinking about your golf swing. And it gets tricky, obviously, if you aren't trusting it and you're sitting there maybe for the first time for a while, or maybe ever, feeling that you need to control how you move or how you swing a golf club, and being conscious of it out there while you're trying to hit a shot, and brain's getting mixed signals. So yeah, it definitely was challenging. It's I wouldn't change it or wouldn't trade it for the world. I think we both learned a lot through it, and it's like good info doesn't automatically equal good results, and vice versa. But I think
and the info you were mentioning, because he now went back to Butch and he's working with Butch, and the info is pretty much the same. Because you even, like, didn't you even, like, talk to Butch about, because Rickie had some experience with Butch, right, beforehand, and so you even were talking to him at the time saying, hey, here are the things we're doing, and Butch is like, yeah, exactly, right?
Yeah, I think we went out there during Vegas one week, and looked at shared some videos, talked a little bit, and I think Rick went back out there maybe the next year, and I wasn't there, and yeah, it was all good, and things were good, and that's what we kind of ran into. Honestly, we'd see stuff on the golf course and in tournaments that would never see it in practice. I mean, the two things I think probably get mixed with that whole story, say with me and him, is first of all, it's not like he didn't call me because he was playing great or hitting it great, right? So it's not like we went in there and then got worse. And
it was facilitated. Like the whole thing was facilitated from Rickie, right? Like he wasn't playing great, and he comes to you and says, "Look, here's, I'm not playing great. I got to make some changes." And he was having some back issues too, right?
Yeah, I think it was just some old stuff with ribs from years, I think, before. Wasn't recent to me. It wasn't right before. I think it was way before that, but some lingering things there. But yeah, I mean, it was just hey, here's what we need to get done. And then, probably for the coaches, all you do is you work with somebody, give them your best. It works out great. You learn from what worked, and then you work from what doesn't. And, it's hard to kind of give somebody, when you throw a bunch at them and then you try to kind of back down, that's more difficult than kind of spoon feeding them and adding to it as you go, or as you gain confidence, as you gain trust. And like I said, we're doing a lot of good things and seeing a lot of good things in practice.
We'll go back to our original conversation we had, the shaft, right? Like the shaft was like Rickie historically would get the shaft kind of laid off, and then from there it would want to steepen a little in transition, and then from there he would, Rickie kind of stayed down a long time as the club would exit past him. There was initially, right, it was kind of getting the shaft a little more say down the line, or what felt across the line, or was it, I know the other bucket was kind of not getting to spin off the ball in the backswing, right? It was kind of getting him to kind of feel like he was a little more loaded into his right side. Those were kind of the two buckets per se. Am I missing anything there?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that probably, it just depends what. There's actually been really significant changes if you go back from early days, college, right? Like the old Rickie, the Rickie that showed up on tour, I guess, big, huge torso turn, kind of outrun the club shut outside the hands, real vertical, super fast hips and transition, lay it off, and then kind of
got my club.
And then kind of pop up and throw it out to the right and roll it. And
like this.
Yeah, a lot of that is right. And he turned so much earlier. By the time, if you kept on going, by the time he gets about lead arm parallel, shaft kind of vertical, he was pretty much done.
So he was. So his turn was already complete here. Right. By the time he was here.
That's right. So when you start kind of going the other way, that's when you'd see that club get kind of pulled into that rotation. You see it shallow out a bunch.
Because he definitely got it more here. Like, and he would rehearse that, right? He would kind of go here, and then turn.
Yeah, so that was old. Old stuff is kind of what you were showing, and then, I think he kind of went through a period where he was trying to not get it so shut outside the hands, vertical. Get it more open, get it on plane, and obviously went through a little stretch there playing great, and then I would say by the time that I saw him, it was just he'd kind of go on the other side of the world as far as that pattern of his old stuff, right?
Yeah.
So the club was in a way different spot as far as completion or travel distance compared to how much he had turned in the same time from where he used to be. So, the gears kind of got jacked up a little bit in the transition stuff is when you start seeing some of that kind of the layoff to the steepening. So, I was trying to run him back towards what had made him successful in the first place.
Yeah, it's interesting, that club at the top, right? Because I was talking to Chris about this too, and in getting the shaft when it's like you see it laid off, right? You don't see a lot of players on tour play from here. There's some. You certainly see more here, and you see more here, right?
Right.
And so you look at that player right there, and Rickie's kind of always been hanging out over there. You see John Rahm he's short, but he hangs out over there. You see Sahith Theegala hanging out over there. And then what's interesting is some from there will go like that. I'm exaggerating, but you'll see him a little pull down. That shaft will want to go there a little bit. And then others, they'll kind of just keep it there.
Right.
Back down this way like this. So Sahith kind of keeps it there. Rahm keeps it there. We were talking about Jamie Lovemark, who Chris works with. He keeps it there.
Yep.
And usually, those players, they kind of, they kind of use, you kind of see their chest kind of hanging back just a little bit. But even on the other side, John, and I'd love to get your thoughts. When you see it over here, even if it steepens in transition, then usually that better player, they'll come into here and they'll kind of stop. The handle will get up a little high, and then you'll see them kind of release it, down the line where they kind of hang out this way. So it just feels like neither one of those, whether they keep it back there or they steepen it, really kind of suggests a whole lot of getting out of the way and covering it, really.
Yeah, I would say, so it's kind of where the center mass of that club is and sort of where the direction of the pull is. So if guys get that center mass, when they lay it off, center mass club gets way behind them, right? It's far, far away and over here. And then obviously if they have the kind of pull forward and open, it's going to come tomahawking down steep.
Right.
And then basically, a lot of those guys, to your point, they get in a position where now kind of blowing a lot of the fuel, and you'll see a lot of kind of closed chests and arms go flying off them to the right.
Yeah. Yeah. So what's interesting, and then if you go after that, because I think I have a couple players right now that I work with in here, good players, and they both kind of go here, they kind of go here, right? And they manage things pretty well through here. But as you kind of take that shaft, and let's say you start taking it this way more, right? Let's just say you start kind of getting the shaft more like this. Well, then in transition, it wants to start going more this way, right? Versus when it's here, it kind of gets in here. And it's interesting because it's almost like a fine line. There's a little window there, and you start kind of toggling where, okay, it's laid off, and the next time it's more cross line, it's laid off. And then how that shaft pitches and transitions a little different. And it's just it's a tough one, that window in there of then how the body
Right.
needs to respond one way or the other, and it's just a tough window to manage. It's almost like you either got to get it okay, we're just going to leave it there, or we got to take the whole bottle and get it over there. You got to exaggerate it. I need you as a student to get it over there. I can't have you toggling in between and
Right.
kind of, let me just take a little bit. And then that little bit's not enough. And it just seems like it's one of those areas in the swing. It's a tough one to manage. And I think the better the player, the harder it is to manage.
Yeah. I mean, I think you just have to kind of watch how it runs up all the segments, right? All the joints, how they're all play into that. Because a lot of the ones that worry me are the Frankensteins, where you have nothing suggests that should be over there. Say the arms are doing something wild, some lift, over rotate. That would bother me a bunch. Vice versa, if somebody had nothing going on in the lower body and was crossed a bunch, arms are pulling behind them and twisting closed. That's more why that alignment would bother me, right? So, what I always think about is you have where that center mass of club is and where you start moving is going to affect a lot of that downswing stuff. Mm-hmm. And then at the end of the day, it's I'm having to get this club back to my spine. So what did I do before that? What's that task going to look like now from where I'm at in time and space around where the center mass of that club is? Most times when you see good players doing something funky through it, it's really easy for us as coaches to go in here and go, man, you're popping the handle or you're rolling it. Instead of it's hey, great job.
Yeah.
You have to accomplish a task, and the body's going to do the best it can to pull that off.
Right. Yeah, and it's not as easy as just the shaft, because usually it's like, okay, I fixed the shaft. Okay, now I have to kind of teach them a little bit of how that's going to. Now the body needs to be a little different, right? Because, like, for example, like Sahith and even like Jamie Lombard, like if you got the club a little more across the line, let's just say more down the line, okay, so now the shaft pitches back. You may like that better as a coach, but their pivot's still doing the same thing. Their chest is still kind of hanging back a little bit, and now it's even worse because those don't match up, right? So now they're now they're too shallow and hanging back, and so it's like, okay, I get it over there, but now do I have the time, and do I want to then get them to be a little different coming through, and maybe with a little less side bend, a little more open, those kinds of things. So I don't know. I just find that area up there, the better player. That's a tricky one. I think I told you that too. I was like, whew, I don't know if I'd want that. Like, I don't know if I want that stress.
Right.
Working with Rickie. Let me ask you, finish up with this. You look back, you guys had a nice run, this and that, like, it's never easy to like lose a player, but that's just part of the business, and I think it's important for teachers to hear that. Like, you're not gonna, players are gonna come and go. I mean, even amateur players, and certainly at the professional level. But you look back, would you have done anything different with Rickie, or did you feel like, I did exactly what I wanted to do and I feel good about it?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. Back to your first point, if you don't want to, if you're scared of tossing and turning some nights and stressing out, and if you're scared of being fired, this is not where you want to be. Players at the end of the day, right? They hold all the cards on that end, so it can be a difficult setup sometimes. But yeah, I mean, the Rickie thing, obviously, I think if you look back at anything that didn't go the way that you wanted it to, and can't find something that you'd have done, that you learned from, or that you'd done different, if you had it over again, then you're not learning. So yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously, work my tail off with him, and I would have probably kept the message, I'd have probably packaged it down, trimmed it down, and never jumped ship, never wavered. And the biggest thing is I've probably done a lot more, taking this from here to the golf course, and how do we go? You have to do this. I know you don't like it. You have to do these drills, this training. Then we have to go out here and throw it away, and then get back and some kind of get the job done, hitting the shots, versus kind of blending those two worlds is what got difficult there until the swing kind of got to where you want it, and then because that's just part of it, right? It's like those goofy swings don't mean people can't play, and good swings don't mean people are going to be good players.
Right. Did you ever? When's the last time you looked at a player and you're like, "Come on, man, just exaggerate it more. Jesus, just do it." So that's the other thing. Like, that's the other thing. Like, players push back. They push back. It's not just, here, I want you to do A and B and all is good in the world, right? They're like, well, why do you want me to do A? Well, I don't want to do A. Well, because that's what you're hiring me to do, right? And it seems that simple, but sometimes it's not. Like, and even at the amateur level, like, I don't know if I can do that. All right, don't do it.
That's what, as we talking about kids growing up and us getting older and priorities changing a little bit, is, I think if you have good information to give them, and you're a good coach and charge them enough where it's worth both of you guys' time, I know I've gotten a lot better at just saying, this is what I believe, this is what we're going to do, and the door's unlocked back there behind me.
Did you say the door's unlocked behind me?
Yeah. 2 ways out of here.
Yeah, and I think,
I would always put, and sometimes I don't think that people look. The reality of it is, most of the guys that you're giving lessons to, even the tour players, right? You live and die off of every shot, right? Mm-hmm. Shots being good is a reflection of if you're doing the right thing or if you're going to be successful, blah blah blah. So the ball always means something. And what learning really looks like is foreign to 99.9% of the people that you're going to run into. as far as students. So then we have to kind of create those environments that make them only be able to kind of do it one way. So I know for me, like I have to quit feeding them golf balls, like when the guy, like you're saying, exaggerating guy, they just love to rapid fire them out of here. And it's like, what that was like, and it's like the 1700 before you hit in 12 seconds. So, I love taking the ball away. I love making them watch themselves, talk me through it, make them tell me what I told them, tell it back to me, show me what you do, show me what I'm asking you to do. Now show me what you overdoing, what I'm asking you to do look like. And then we can hit some into this net. And then finally I'll move it away and let you have a party for a little while.
Yeah. It's almost like, how can you create that environment for them to self-discover? And then, as they self-discover, then they own it. And then you can hold them accountable to that rather than you barking at them saying, hey, do this, this, and this. And they're like, all they hear is, oh, geez, all right, kid, okay. So I got to do A and B to be successful is what you're telling me. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just that's the direction that we're taking. Rather, okay, here's the environment. And they're like, oh, it's this. And you're like, let's
100%. Yeah, no
go.
doubt.
Yeah,
that's right.
Just in some of the experiences I've had, when I was teaching a lot full time, and I go back to working with certain players, like I can recall, like when I was working with Fred Funk, and he came back from his surgery, his thumb and his knee, and he was really drifting and off the ball, and I said, look, here's what I think you should do to get yourself to find the low point more, and he had to feel a lot of side bend left in the backswing, and he would just look at me like, well, that's a reverse spine angle. I'm like, well, not for you, it's not, because you have too much side bend this way, and so I need you to feel this when you turn. And man, we kind of like for a while. And then I'd show him on video and you're like, oh, wow, okay, yeah. So I am kind of staying. And his turn was getting bigger. He's, all of a sudden his hips, he's starting to open up a little bit, and all of a sudden his swing's getting longer. Club head's like over here now versus over here. So we kind of went back. There was like a week into this, and I'm like, man, I don't feel like we're getting anywhere. I feel like this is the right thing he needs to be doing. So it wasn't until probably like second week I started kind of creating this environment where, like, well, what does that feel like to you? Like, what is it when you do that? What does that mean? And I can't remember exactly how it all went down, but basically the point of the story is we got to the point where it was not side bend left to him. It was something else. It was, I have no idea what it was. I'm like, well, that's interesting, but let's go, and I was a young teacher and just probably talking way too much and just wanted to help the guy so much. I mean, I'd do anything to get him back on track and play and wrap my arms around him. Let's go shoot 66. And it's like, no, stop talking and just think about what's happening. You got to get him to do what you're trying to get him to do. And what you're telling him right now is not working, because I think he buys it, but he's not fully buying it.
Right.
And then eventually it was like, okay, it was his idea. There was things coming. He was talking more. It's coming from him. And so anyway, long story short, it was a lot of failure in there to get to a point of like, all right, this is probably a better way to go about it with Fred, which was entirely different than maybe another player, because that player's got a different learning style and a completely different personality. So there's an art to it. And I think the best way to get better at it is just to do it.
Yeah.
And as I tell 100%. Teachers, when you do it, whether you're working with a professional or you're working with a 15 handicap, get in there and do it. Get in there and teach. It's great to look at numbers. It's great to look at 3D. It's great to look at video, but you've got to get in there and start putting your hands on people and moving them and putting a plan out and learning from that, because you're gonna fail, but you're gonna have success. But those experiences are far greater than anything you're gonna learn looking at a computer.
For sure. And I think, so many of us, me included, gotten better at it, but it's really easy for us to, like you said, to talk way too much, to explain way too much. It's almost like you're trying to sell them on something. It's like, look, what we've all got to understand is these guys sought you out. They're paying you, you're not campaigning to be their coach. So the faster you can jump in there and tell them what to do with confidence and decisiveness, and then set up environments where they're not getting caught up in a lot of words while they're filling a bunch of things and then yada, yada, yada. And it gets busy. You know where you want to steer them to, and as many environments and external things you can create that basically, the perfect setup is something that basically only lets them do it the way you're wanting them to.
Right.
That you don't have to put a ton of words to. And then, because like to your point, that feels like this, that feels like that, it feels like too much, feels like not enough. It's so subjective that when they're away from you, they don't have any way to train it, right? Like the biggest thing for me when my guys aren't away from me with what I have them working on, I need something to be the referee. I need there not to be any gray area on good reps, bad reps. When it gets and we're saying, they think I'm saying something different than I'm saying, and vice versa, it gets impossible.
Yeah. It's good insight. I hopefully that resonates with some people, and I appreciate you being honest and open about your experiences, with your players and Rickie and Sepp Straka, who you've worked with for 13 months. I want to get to here in a second, who had an incredible year last year, winning in the Arnold Palmer. Tough conditions there. But before we get to that, who's the better student, Rickie Fowler or Barstool Trent?
Oh, man. Well, better student?
Man, the fact that you've taken this long to answer.
No, definitely got to go Rick there.
Okay. Come on.
Bro, Trent's great when he's here. It's just, I'm like, hey, guys, sitting like this is fun and I love it, but this is what getting better looks like.
See, is Trent popping beers out there playing and listening to music, and like, is it the all above, or is he no, he's like, no, I don't want any of that. Give me water. I want to be hydrated. I've got my iron head covers on. I've got my, my little scrub. I wash my clubs after every, where is he? Or is he like in between?
No, yeah, he's there's not it's all business.
Really?
When he's out there trying to do it, it's all business. But no, it's been fun. I've actually got it getting him back down here in a couple of weeks. I said, I've had about enough of this. This is a no camera event, and we're gonna get in here and get this over with.
Okay. All right, let's have some fun here with Sepp. I'm gonna put your boy up here. So here he is. You guys started what? 30. So I said 13 months ago, and really got some good things going, because he won into February at the Arnold Palmer in Orlando. Then
Honda, yeah.
Or excuse me, the Honda, not the at the Honda.
Yeah.
Which is even more impressive. That golf course is just
Oof.
insane. Georgia Bulldog here. I followed you guys for a few holes. We did a little thing for the cut on Golf Channel at the RBC, where he finished third that week, by the way. Ninth at the Players. I mean, he had a nice run there. Even after that win, he kept his good play going. And you said Sepp likes to hit a little baby draw, right?
Yeah, he's always been biased probably too much when we first got going that direction. But yeah, that's preferred shot, but he's definitely a little more neutral these days.
What was the issue when you guys started? Like what brought him to you? Was it the miss to the right, or what kind of started moving things in this direction? Like what did you do technically there?
Yeah, I think coming to me was more of a just kind of needing a spark, just kind of mudding through sort of where he'd been for a while. I'm not sure if he, really honestly just kind of needing a path or a plan a little bit to get better. We had a lot of mutual friends and kind of running a lot of the same circles. So I was always impressed with him. I always thought he could be a really good player. I always joke with him that I always, thought that I thought he's better than he thought he was, or could be better than he thought he was. I thought the sky was the limit with him. But yeah, golf swing wise, used to really get his arms behind him really fast in the backswing, kind of crank lawnmower, face was really shut. And so he'd get kind of deep and twisted around. And so then he'd always sort of run into this kind of slide to get it ready to hit with, and then have to kind of tilt back to line it up. So obviously everything got very de-lofted, pushy, a lot of low, a lot of push, everything starting right, wedges coming in, skipping across greens. It's like, look, you're a big boy, you're gonna play some big boy golf and you're gonna be good. Execution wise, we gotta be able to hit 5 irons up in the air, and we gotta be able to make wedges land calmer, those kind of things.
But you can see it's definitely a little wider here. Like this swing here, it looks like it's a little more out in front of him.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Gosh, how often is that worked on? I mean, like halfway back. I mean, it's just, you work on it with, seems like I work on it at least 60, 70% of the time with amateurs getting the club started right. And then even professionals and talking to you guys and like, yeah, we're just trying to get the club a little better here going back, or, and then you have this, Twitter pack that's like, well, all that matters is impact, and all that matters is just getting to a good impact. Well, it's not that simple, right? I mean, it's like the backswing sets the stage for amateurs to develop skill and do different things on the downswing. And for tour players, backswing kind of makes things just a little bit easier and more repeatable coming down. And here's Sepp just working on trying to get the club more out in front of him here, right?
Yeah, and like the backswing thing, I agree. Impact all that matters, right? The problem with that is it's not just the position of the club. There's rotations and pressure shifts, and there's times and there's speeds that are going on in the backswing that are going to affect how this thing plays in the downswing. Along with, like you said, those alignments, right? Of the shaft, arms, blah, 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 how arms relate to torso to lower, on and on and on. So the thing is, it's like, this is a marathon, you're trying to make, it's like, sure, impact's all matters, but, we're trying to make this as efficient as possible. So I'm trying to get these guys to where their bag can only be so bad. I need, like you said, you're talking about a shot or two here and there every tournament or two over 28, 30 events, whatever it may be, right? So trying to get this thing as clean as possibly can be and make it, just because these guys can achieve a task from a spot that me or you might not be able to from the same position, that doesn't mean that's the swing I want to keep forever. That means they're really talented. And so in my mind, the easier I make that job, the better they should get.
So that right there. So when you say his arms, like his hand path was kind of inside of that, like closer to his body.
Yeah. So right there, his trail elbow would be more bent and tucked behind the seam of his shirt already at that point.
Okay. I see. Almost like the elbow is like retracting back.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's got a little more width out in front of him, which is a different relationship from the club head to the hand. So there's like, okay, his hands to his body, you got your elbows, and then there's from the hands to the club head. And, those are like two separate things. Oftentimes when you're talking. So very clean there. The big guy, man, when we were falling that day, do that again. I just like how that club just kind of, it just kind of just nice little fall. I mean, just a nice little fall in transition. I mean, it just looks like, it doesn't look like he's pulling or pinching or like, it just comfortable, in transition. And then from there, it's just hit it. And sometimes you see that bigger drop, right? You see the bigger lay down and those kinds of things. And with Sepp, it looks like it's almost like he's not applying any force, right? Just leave it alone and just let it be. And then he just kind of gets out of the way.
Yeah, you see that transition stays pretty quiet when when what's below it's not flying open or jerking, right? It's not throwing it down the line. So like his transition pretty chill. Where his peaks are good, so you don't see a lot of bouncing around. The
other thing I like about him, I was watching him, is I like that left knee. Kind of like something as simple as that. This is actually, I pause this. He's already kind of started down just barely, but just like something as simple as letting that left knee kind of point a little more behind the ball. And just right hip kind of turns back, left knee behind it. I don't know. I think it's kind of lost in the shuffle sometimes. And then from there, he just kind of falls left and hits it. And Sepp doesn't strike me as a guy that would back up too much through the zone. Like, he does a pretty good job staying right on top of it, covering it.
Yeah, I mean, that's what that's one of the things he's gotten a lot better at.
Okay. That's something early on you guys cleaned up pretty quickly.
Yeah, and usually that's a pretty quick place to go to when he gets in trouble and he gets pushy. The looser his backswing gets, the more he puts a big slide on it, and the more he slides, the more he has to kind of arms get left behind him and his tilt to kind of line it back up.
So he gets a little too lateral with the legs.
Yeah, it just gets kind of one-sided, right? Like you're talking about on the backswing. It's like, hey guys, like how much do you want me to shift back? How much you want me to turn? How much you want me to do? Mm-hmm. How are these guys going to play together and make some sense? Because I agree with you. I mean, I think it's very easy for most people to get pretty one-sided. That's what we see a lot of. That's pretty good.
So, yeah, I like that. Yeah, probably a little more height on that now, right? A little higher trajectory.
Yeah, and this was a long iron. This was at RSM. I think he was hitting long irons up in the downwind, hitting them up in the air.
So he gets, for the audience here at home, he would get a little too this way.
Yeah.
Right. And then the spine would kind of be left back.
Yeah.
Versus maybe a little more, I'll exaggerate a little bit more, what feels like that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he would get, like you said, he get way more on the target side, and the arm's already kind of behind. So, this job it's like kind of put my arms, I'm kind of mechanically sort of disadvantaged now, right? So it's like to get these arms to catch back up, there'd be a lot of this to get it done. Which obviously works, but then that's when that pattern gets exaggerated is when it gets pretty pushy.
I get lateral and I get too lateral, it gets left. I get a little more rotational, it gets more out in front of me.
So then you can imagine, if you put your arms behind you a bunch, you crank the lawnmower and then do that.
And that's where the neutral path comes from more. So he's less draw biased, and where he'd get too draw biased if the legs were out racing and he's hanging, then the path gets on too far to the right, and then he's got to turn the face down more, and and that dispersion gets a little bigger. Versus if he neutralizes that path more by not being so lateral and covering a little more, then he path a little closer to zero, tighter windows.
Right, and that's a little bit of the cycle that you'd see. It's like if you just cut the arms off and it's like, all right, it gets a little slidey and tilty. It's like, I imagine that's pushing. And it's like, well, he's a really good player. It's like, cool, I already know what his face is about to look like.
Yeah.
And then vice versa, if I don't do that, it goes left. So then they start sliding, so those are that's the cycle. We're kind of bouncing back and forth, all trying to keep them a little more in between.
You ever want to just look at Sepp and be like, dude, why don't you just hit it harder? Sometimes, right? You ever just look at him and be like, dude, swing faster.
Well, we're working on it. The thing is, he's a big dude. I don't know if people hadn't. You've obviously been out there with him. I know you're a tall guy too, but Sepp's he's a hoss, and
he's a big boy, 6'3", 235.
Yeah, so he's got just the mass. So he's got half the momentum formula built in, which is nice.
Yeah.
And a lot of the stuff that you're saying, a lot of it, physically just thoracic mobility and hip mobility is the two things where he's super limited. Mm-hmm. So he's working hard on that, and he's taking care of his body and working on it. And, those things definitely it's one thing to say, hey, don't do this. But it's like, well, if everywhere my hips go, my chest has to go, you're going to start seeing some of those things. And same thing with the arms to the, for me to get my arms back, everybody's got to get drug off of it both ways. That's where those ranges get kind of big with them sometimes.
See, if I was on that podcast with them and Froggy did it on Wednesday with Sepp, I'd have looked at him and said, all right, Sepp, here's what I want from you. I want 5 more miles an hour speed.
I think he can do it.
I'm sure he can. Yeah, I'm sure. I think last year he was like 113, 114.
Yeah.
Right around the 300 mark, which was like, sign me up, right? Like for all of us. But 6'3", his size, what he's got going, like, man, I'd be like, speed that damn thing up. Let's open up that thoracic and that hip, and because I mean, look, 5 miles an hour to Sepp on tour would be huge.
Oh yeah, no, it's coming. It's coming. It's definitely part of the plan here. It's just wanting to do it the right way, right? I'm wanting to bring a little bit better body and a
what do you mean? There's not a pill? You just take a pill and you get 5 more miles an hour? That's not what it is.
But I'm just not into drastically changing patterns, chasing it. You know, I want guys to be super tight and efficient, and just keep bringing a better athlete to the ball every year.
Well, we talked about earlier in the show, you know, how that window there can be a little dicey with the better players. And I mean, you start trying to go faster with a player, that can get dicey too, right? Because all of a sudden, you know, chasing distance, like you look at Matthew Fitzpatrick, came out on the other end and has done a nice job with his speed. There's been others that have made it through. Spieth wasn't so kind, took him kind of 2.5, 3 years to find his way back. And, you know, there's pitfalls to speed. And when they start trying to create speed and they know the attack angle game, if I hit up more, this and that, you know, there's some things that can start happening. And then pretty soon they've kind of lost their way with their irons and this and that. And then you're like, oh my God, you know, through this idea of speed, the player has lost his DNA that got him there. So it's always a tricky cycle. And it's not just as easy as, hey, and I'm half joking, right? When I say this about Sepp, like, hey, I want 5 more miles an hour, 5 more miles an hour out of you. And you and I both know, like, yeah, I mean, you know, he's capable. I'm sure he could step in there right now and swing it at 120, no problem. Question is, can he mentally take that to the course and feel like Sepp Straka and play, right? And that's a journey that they have to go on to transition that to the course that Fitzpatrick was able to do pretty seamlessly, but that's not always the case.
Yeah, no, it's not. You know, and again, I agree. There's no doubt it's an advantage, right? But you know, I think there's so much leakage, you know, within what players already have.
Yeah.
That, to me, the better that gets, they're probably going to pick up a little bit of speed, also. But yeah, you won't see any of my guys show up randomly one year swinging it longer and jumping off the ground and stuff.
You know, it's funny. There's a video I just posted it. There's phenols in Hawaii, right? And if anybody's got more speed in the tank, it's Tony. And he posted this video, and it was a long video, and I watched it. In the middle of it is he's with his family. He did this yesterday, and they had the quad out there, and he took a swing, John, and the club was like past parallel, and carried it 330 or something, 335. And it was just awesome to watch. Like, to your point, it's in there.
Yeah.
You know, like everybody thinks, well, how come is that as far as he can? No. I mean, Tony can, if he wants to wind it up and hit it,
yeah,
he would be the longest on tour because there's 20 yards more of carry in his swing right now if he wants it.
Yeah, and it's like, hey, you know, I think players find at the end of the day, absolutely distance is an advantage, but also, you know, they're paying you for the score you write down, and you know, it's like all the way down to 7 irons. It's like, well, tour average 7 iron, or to say TrackMan number says it's 172 or 3 or something, right? It's like, well, there's not one guy out there that couldn't hit their 7 iron more than 172. So it's like, how do they all land around? I know that's the middle, but how do they all land around that? You know, these guys that have been out there for a long time, you don't usually see them. The guys that have long careers, they're usually not trending that direction throughout their career, right? It's usually everything's getting tighter and tighter and tighter and more polished and more polished and more polished, not longer, wilder. But at the same time, the game's changed a lot, and you know, we've seen the advantage of speed and that you can do something about it.
Yeah.
And you know, that's obviously here to stay. But you got to figure out how to do it in the, I guess, safest way possible.
Yep. All right, John. Good stuff, man. I know you're at home. I know you got your 2 boys. Go. I don't want to take any more time away. But I appreciate you coming on, man, and opening up about the journey and great stuff with Sepp. And I know Bryce is out there again this year, and Kevin Kisner, and I know you consult with some other players as well. So appreciate your time, man. All the best this year.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me.
PXG has done it again with the launch of a new lineup of drivers, fairways, hybrids, and irons. The new Gen 5 golf clubs deliver significantly increased MOI, faster ball speeds, longer distances, and tighter dispersions, all coupled with the exceptional feel and sound golfers have come to expect from PXG. Schedule your custom fitting or buy online at pxg.com.